Hi, good evening, all of you. Just confirming if I'm visible on YT as well. Right. Just give me a couple of seconds. Hello, good evening. Good evening, Korani, Dhruv, Kar, Danny. Good evening, Harshal. Hi, Stellify. Good evening. Okay, all right. Now I am confident that I am visible on both the platforms. Right. So I welcome you to another editorial analysis session. Great. And I'm really happy that you have been attending these sessions because my effort is always to cover diverse topics from diverse sources that they have formed sources of your cat RC passages. So that is always the effort, right? However, I also don't want us to, get trapped in this echo chamber where we cover only those sources that have appeared in the past. What if new sources come this time, right? So we should always read from other sources as well. Okay, so today's editorial is from the Times, right? It's a British newspaper, and today's editorial comes from there. Okay. Good evening, Govinda. Good evening. Right. I hope I am visible and audible on both the platforms. Right. So, now yesterday, some of you told me that, ma'am, please take this session on the portal and not on YT because we have polls here, right? But some of you were also a little confused. Okay, you felt that how will we access this session on the portal? So let me just quickly walk you through these simple steps, right? And then we'll begin the session so that if some of you want to come from YT to here, you can do that. Oh, Descartes, the word is scary, is it? Right. So I hope there is no lag anywhere. Good evening, Atul. Good evening, Himanshi. No lag. Excellent, excellent. Right. So the first step is, of course, you have to go to this website, rodha.co.in. You can do this with me right now. Those of you who are on YT, do this with me. Go to rodha.co.in. Then you have to register yourself on the portal. So when you go, this pop-up will be there. You have to create an account. So just give your name, email address, password, your phone number, and click on next. Right? So far just the simple registration process. Now once you've done that, this you'll see this kind of a screen, and on this screen click on this tab here, all courses, right? So when you click on all courses, okay, it's buffering. That's what I felt, that there is some buffering, right? I think it should be okay in a while. Just let me just see. On portal it's fine, is it? This is strange, right? Okay. Seems to be a problem with YT, all right. Okay. Okay. So in that case, let me just in fact tell you how to come to this, right? How to come to portal. Click on all courses, and once you do that, you have to scroll to recorded courses, and there you'll find the free course, right? Which is where this session is happening. Once we do that, you just click on buy now for free and you are enrolled. You then can see all the classes that are scheduled. Okay, that's the process. So I hope this is clear to everybody. Let me again check if it's clear to everybody, if people on YT can also hear and see me. Which medium does Rodha use? Yeah, it's not Meet, it's not Zoom, it's a platform that we have a tie-up with, right? I don't know the name, but it's a unique platform because there's no lag here, right? So on YT there's an 8-second lag. Here we don't have any lag. Yeah. Graphy is the name. Correct, Govinda. Yes. Right. Okay. I think it's fine now. Now, that means we can proceed. If this process is clear to you. Right, let's go. So yes, Descartes, as you said, for some of you the name is scary, but don't be scared by the name. Okay, the article, again, if you delve into it, it's not tricky. It's saying something that in fact will resonate with you very well, right? So Descartes, let me just give you a quick introduction before we go into the article so that you don't go with, let's say, without any background. So Cartesian plane, yes, yes, yes. So Cartesian plane was, it is related to Descartes, yes. So he was a philosopher, a popular one, René Descartes. He was French, and just like a lot of people from the Renaissance time, he was not just a philosopher, he was also a mathematician, he was also a scientist. So, you know, there is a term, there is an idiom called Renaissance man. So, Renaissance man is an idiom that means someone who is, yes, a polymath, someone who is multi-talented, right? So a polymath, a multi-talented person. So that's what Descartes was, and he is known as the father of modern philosophy. A very, very popular quote by him is cogito ergo sum, sorry. So what do you understand by this? It's a Latin phrase. Cogito ergo sum. I think, therefore I am. Cogito, I think. So even though he was French, this quote is in Latin because Latin was the medium of education during that time. Okay, no matter whether you were French or Italian, right, or Roman. So ergo means therefore. Good, Suryansh, good. And sum, I am. So cogito ergo sum. I think, therefore I am. So what would this mean? I think, therefore I am. Imagine an AI device telling you this, an AI platform. I think, therefore I am. So Descartes felt that, you know, because he was aware of the fact that he could think, right? That's why he could conclude that he exists. So he was looking for a proof for his existence. Okay, basically he thought, what if, I don't really exist? This is just an illusion, right? Maybe this is someone else's dream and I don't have any existence of my own. So he came to this conclusion that no, see, I think, I have this faculty, I have this ability to think, therefore I must exist. Okay, so a lot of people today will dispute it. It has been disputed, but this is a popular quote by him. And yes, and if you have read Sophie's World, it does talk about Descartes. It does devote some time to Descartes, right? So he felt, so see, a person who is concluding their existence on the basis of thinking, that means imagine the kind of importance that they must give to thinking, right? Thinking for them would be everything. So pure reason, separate from experience and the body, is the key to true knowledge. That's what Descartes felt, that it is pure reason, right? That is the key to true knowledge. Right, let me just check your messages quickly. It is lagging, is it? For YT people, can you, let me just ask them to join me on the portal. I'll just tell them to register. Right. So, existentialism, Magesh, that's what probably you mean to say. Existentialism. What is that? Can anybody tell me? Existentialism. Yes, Suryansh, I will teach in R6. So, any idea what this word means? Have you heard of this philosopher Sartre? Jean-Paul Sartre, again a French philosopher, and he was an existentialist. He was an existential philosopher. So existentialists, what they mulled over, what they thought about was the purpose of their existence, right? Does our existence have any purpose? And Sartre said no, there is no inherent purpose in our existence. That's what Sartre concluded. Now, of course, different philosophers had different opinions, right? In fact, these some of these existential philosophers, yes, they talked about free will and choice. So they said that when we are born, when a human being is born, they are a tabula rasa. Can you tell me what this means, tabula rasa? A blank slate. Table, this means table, so this is a slate. Rasa comes from erase, okay, on which there's nothing. So when we are born, we are like a blank slate, and it is, through our experiences, through our conditioning, that we then develop a sense of, let's say, what our purpose is going to be, right? What we are going to do in our life. So we have this free will, we have this choice, right? There is no inherent purpose to our existence. That is what a lot of existentialist philosophers believe, right? And kind of an extreme of this is nihilism. Anybody who knows this? So yeah, see, discussion on philosophy, one thing comes from the other, right? So from Descartes we have reached nihilism. What does it mean? Who is a nihilist philosopher? Nihil, no. Okay, so Suryansh, on an average it would be around 45 minutes itself for me as well, not more than that. Nihilo means nil, right? So yes, they say that life is meaningless. So I don't read nihilist philosophers because I suddenly start feeling sad when I read them. They say that life does not have any meaning, right? Nietzsche, okay, I hope that is how his name is pronounced. Different people pronounce his name in different ways. Nietzsche. So Nietzsche is a nihilist philosopher, a very popular one, right? Anyway, I think we have discussed the background of Descartes, right, which will help you in understanding what we are going to talk about. And trust me, it's not a difficult excerpt today, right? So it's how many words? It's, I think, around 500 something words only, not more than that, right? So read this slide, or do you want us to read together? Whatever works for you, we'll do that. Yes, there are questions. There are 4 questions after this. Okay. All right. Read first then. Please read. Done? Done? Okay. So, what do you understand from this? What is the article going to talk about in the next paragraphs? Is the article going to appreciate Descartes? Yes. But see here it says feminist critiques. So critiques of whom? So the author here says that Descartes philosophy, Descartes is saying, okay, how can you acquire knowledge? Isolate yourself, sit in a room where there are no distractions, then think, and all you have to do is think for 6 days. Okay, you're not stepping out to do anything, just think, right? And after that you will, and this is what he did actually. He reflects on his beliefs, on God, and on nature, and there he comes to realize his essence as a thinking thing. There he came to realize, no, that I think, I have this capability, therefore I am. So his philosophy, his entire philosophy begins in social isolation, right? Feminist critiques have alighted on this starting point. What does this word mean? Alighted. When you alight from a train, right, you deboard it, right? So they have kind of deboarded his train. They don't want to hear more. They are not convinced. They don't buy this, right? So feminist critics have alighted on this starting point. The fantasy of isolation, this is a fantasy, the fantasy of isolation, this privileging, this, giving more importance to mind over body, this insistence that knowledge can be achieved all on one's own. So they have alighted right at this point. They don't agree with this, they don't buy this. These are indicators of a certain mindset, isolation, mind over body, knowledge. I'll be able to achieve knowledge all on my own, right? These are indicators of a certain mindset, it is said. One that bakes into its starting point the conclusions it aims to draw. Okay, so let me see if somebody has explained this, that bias was baked into his process and the outcome was influenced by this process. Absolutely, right? So he had this bias towards, let's say, mind over body. He felt that he could achieve knowledge all on his own, and this bias was baked into his starting point, meaning it was it was incorporated, it was built in his starting point, and therefore influenced the conclusions that he drew. Excellent, Govinda. But someone must be doing the shopping, someone must be lighting the fire, yes, when he was doing the thinking thing. So Mary Midgley is a popular British philosopher, was a popular British philosopher. She wrote an essay for BBC Radio in the 1950s, which was more specific in complaint. So, what was her complaint? Descartes' problem, she said, was that he was a childless bachelor. Because only someone without a family would think of isolation as the starting point for philosophical reflection, right? Now, her essay was rejected by the editor as a trivial, irrelevant intrusion of domestic matters into intellectual life. Okay, so the editor said, oh, your point is very trivial. It is raising a very minor, irrelevant concern. Okay, domestic matters are too minor to actually intrude, to invade somebody's intellectual life, right? So, this is what the editor said. Okay, so the next paragraph, yes, it will contradict the last statement. Later on, Mary criticized this isolation thought of Descartes. Okay. She has criticized it here. Let's see now what comes next. So far, so good. Is everything clear? Perfect. Yes. See this. Read and then I'll read with you. Read? Perfect. So, it says that there are people, who have to work from home and they have their children also at home. They cannot avoid the irrelevant intrusion of domestic matters into intellectual life. And the author has put this in quotes. The author is criticizing this, right? That's why it has been put into quotes that, see, I want to distance myself from this, I want to criticize this. So, and this is very true, especially after COVID, right? A lot of people are working from home and they have children also. And this is in the Western context where there are daycare schools of sorts, right? In the Indian context, people generally don't send their children out when they are very young, when they are kids, babies, right? So, they are working from home with their kids. And so now the author gives examples of how this, how these domestic matters intrude or invade into the intellectual life, into this thinking life of ours. A conversation with a colleague about some nicety of Kant was interrupted by my daughter screaming, "That's not fair," outside the bedroom door. So she was discussing some important point that Kant must have said, right? And yes, Stellify, I agree. And suddenly this person's daughter screamed, "That's not fair." Yeah? So, intrusion. The few books that I have brought home snuggle up against Monopoly, Marble Run, and Lego. So again, you see how the personal and professional, they are coexisting. The personal and intellectual, rather, they are coexisting. What does snuggle up mean? Yes, Suryansh, correct, correct. Sit close to, yes, absolutely. They sit close to. Sit close to. Right. I have brought home, yeah, they snuggle up against these, of course, these are games, right? Lego. My attempts at reading and writing are punctuated by the making of snacks, the settling of disputes, the sound of children's television. So, punctuated means, what does punctuated mean? Here, I know it's a grammar term, not accompanied by, no, they are interrupted by. See, what does a punctuation do? It indicates a pause. A comma would indicate a brief pause. A full stop would indicate a longer pause. So they are, in a way, paused by, broken by. That's the idea, right? Interrupted, paused, broken. So punctuated by. Making of snacks, etc., etc. Withdrawal from the world is not much of a withdrawal, because see, Descartes' philosophy, it begins with a withdrawal, right? That was the first sentence. So withdrawal from the world is not much of a withdrawal when some of the world comes with you, right? And there's a question on this sentence, that's why I'll not explain it in a lot of detail, right? So if I ask you to guess whether the author is a male or a female, what would you say? Okay. Others. How did you guess that? Interesting, how did you guess this? That the author is a female? BBC? No, no, this is from the Times. It's another British newspaper. So, at least somebody who empathizes with. So here also this person is working from home, right? So the technical definition of a homemaker is someone who manages the home, but here this person is working from home, so they probably do hold a job. But no, you are all wrong. Okay, first of all, see, we cannot guess anything about the gender of the author here, right? We simply don't know. It could very well be a male, and you will be surprised to know it is indeed a male, right? This has been written by a person whose name is Anil Gomez. Okay, so gender cannot be guessed. That is the answer that I was looking for. Inference में बहुत कम मार्क्स दूंगी मैं ऐसे आंसर्स करोगे तो, right? So we simply don't know what the gender of the author is. No, the British philosopher Mary is not the author of this article, no. Because then she would not refer to herself as Mary Midgley. She would say, I wrote a piece in 1950s. Right? Okay. Let's go to the next paragraph. Oh, okay, 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 Megesh. No, 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 no. It was not in quote. See, if had it been a continuation, there would be some indication that this is what Mary Mijli said. Okay? Read, read, read. Done? Okay. Midgley thought that the absence of the family from philosophical thinking was a problem for philosophy. It's actually a problem for philosophy. And this will be elaborated why it's a problem for philosophy. And that Descartes' philosophical views would not have survived close contact with the messy reality of small bodies that place demands on your own. Right, so Descartes' philosophical views would not have survived a day with children, right? For anybody living intimately with another as a genuine member of a family, she wrote in the rejected essay, Rings and Books, cogito would be cogitamus. Now, this is something that, of course, we would not know. This is a Latin term. Cogito is I think, we know that. Cogitamus here means we think. I think for them would be we think. Yes, it is plural. So, one guess, one way of guessing this is that after this, I am saying that their consciousness would be every bit as certain as his own. Okay, the children's consciousness would be every bit as certain as the person's. So, cogito, I think, would be we think. It has to include them as well. Okay, so that's why there it's a problem for philosophy, because philosophy is kind of assuming that all our thoughts, they can happen in isolation. Our thoughts can come and go in isolation. But think about it, aren't our thoughts also formed because of our interactions? Right, our thoughts are also a product of our relationships with other people. So that's the problem that is there with Descartes' philosophy. Right? So cogito would be cogitamus, their consciousness, the children's consciousness, their awareness of thinking, feeling, experiences would be every bit as certain. They also exist as much as this person does. Their thoughts also influence this person. Having children, she said elsewhere, so in another place within the article, she elsewhere said, is extremely valuable when one comes to talk about the difference between people and animals. Perhaps she meant that children are a reminder that our intellectual pursuits have to be earned just as much as walking and using cutlery. So, because she says that it is through having children that you realize how many things human beings actually learn, how many things that appear very basic in adulthood, like walking, using cutlery, right? They are also to be learned, just like our intellectual pursuits, just like what we will pursue in terms of our career, just like what we will think about, our philosophy, all of this has to be learned, right? And it is not learnt in isolation. Midgley's reflections present children as the bump in the carpet that reveals the fundamental flaws in grand philosophical visions. Okay, what does this mean? Bump in the carpet. Why is the author using this phrase? So, a hurdle. It's not as smooth as Descartes thinks, It's not as smooth like a carpet. There is a bump there, right? We live in contact with other human beings, right? And especially little human beings, some of us. So this is the excerpt, right? It's a short excerpt. We finished it in 3 slides, and now we'll see some questions based on this. Now, do you feel that it was challenging? It was difficult? No, I mean, we can easily call it moderate, right? The Times, Chahat, it's from the newspaper, The Times. Not a lot, right? Moderate hai. Correct. I agree with you. Now let's see a question, and I'll give you 90 seconds for this. Right. Let's see what you say. Oh, I have given 5 options. There are only 4. Okay, so ignore E. Okay. So I can see that this was challenging for you, this question. There is a lot of divergence in the responses. Right. Now, let's see why C is the answer, right? Okay, okay. Then you've marked correctly. That means I can add a bit to the percentage, right, and subtract a bit from here. So, here we are saying that this is what we have to give an example of: a mindset that bakes into its starting point, that builds into its starting point the conclusions it aims to draw, right? So if you say a philosopher who believes women are intellectually inferior to men, if let's say this person believes this, so if they want to draw this conclusion, if this is their belief, this is their mindset, and they want to draw the same conclusion, they will also search for those women only, no, who are intellectually inferior to men, not superior. So I think this could be very easily rejected. Option A. Make sense? Then B and D, I mean, a similar percentage, but I'm sure for D it's a little less. A professor who knowing only one way to teach. So this is not really about a mindset. This is about knowledge. So this person knows only one way to teach, does not experiment with any other way, right? And writes a book on the merits of his way of teaching. So is it about a mindset? Tell me. That this person believes, does this person naturally believe that his method of teaching or their method of teaching is meritorious, has a lot of merit in it? Do we know this, that they believe that? We don't know. So how can we conclude this? So nothing about the mindset or the belief system of this person is given to us. Okay. B. A CEO who assumes that teenagers dislike his company's product. Okay. Now, here we see a belief system. Okay, it's an assumption, right? Teenagers dislike the company's product. Does not change his opinion despite new data showing a huge demand for his product among teenagers, right? So here it's just that this person is sticking to their belief. They are not changing their belief. Are they going for any sort of investigation and any sort of drawing of conclusions? We don't see any active investigation on their part. No, They believe something, they've assumed something. When you show them contrary data, they simply don't buy it, they simply don't believe it. That's it. Whereas here, this person is actively trying to draw a conclusion that is in consonance with, that agrees with their belief, right? So they believe that diversity leads to high productivity, okay? And therefore they select for their sample. So now they are actively researching those organizations that are diverse and have high productivity. So what will their conclusions be like? Their conclusion will also probably be in line with this only. Diversity leads to high productivity. Okay, so that's why C. Make sense? All right. Perfect. Now, let's have a look at the next one. I told you there's a question on this sentence. So, 4 options. Now, I've corrected this. And 90 seconds. Remember, you have to answer in the context of the passage. See, any interpretation that you make of any sentence, okay, in the exam also, it has to be in the context of the passage, right? So, some of you could have actually asked me to go back, okay. So, here, this person is talking about, when sum of the world comes with you, what is this sum of the world? The author is talking about children here. So, the interpretation of this sentence has to address children, has to talk about children. That is why, those who have marked A, I see that a significant percentage has marked A as well, right? It says as a human being is a social animal. We need to interact with other people. Now, these people could be anybody, no? They don't just have to be our family. Okay, whereas this passage is about your immediate family, genuine member of a family. For anybody living intimately with another as a genuine member of a family, and especially children, right? So, that is why this becomes too broad. Okay. Yes, it is an easy question. It is not a difficult question. Okay. I would call it easy to probably moderate for some of you, but it difficult to bilkul bhi nahi hai. Okay. So as a human being is a social animal, this becomes too broad because we interact with so many people, right? They cannot completely isolate themselves from the world. It's not about their incapability because of being a social animal. It's their incapability because of, let's say, being in a close familial relationship with another, especially children. So a person having children cannot isolate themselves from the world in the true sense, because children demand one's time and attention. Some of that world comes with you, right? And so many examples are given there, right? That the child screaming, that's not fair, right? Accommodating your stuff with the children's stuff, making snacks for them, settling their disputes, the sound of their television. So they are demanding one's time and attention. Okay. Fight between B and C. Okay. C says if a person having children wishes to isolate, they cannot, because their children are always in touch with the world. So it's not about the children being in touch with the outside world. It's about they imposing their demands, and they asking for your time. Okay, so it's not about their being in touch with the world outside. So D, isolation is a luxury that only, oh, this is extreme, that only unmarried people without dependent children can afford. No, probably see, here when the author begins this, see, she says those of us who cannot afford daycare and work from home with children. So there are people, who probably are sending their kids to daycare. So for them, it would not be that big a problem. So it's not like you have to be a bachelor and you have to be childless in order to afford this luxury. So eliminated. B, Bangalore. Okay. All right. Now you have to tell me the tone of the final paragraph of the passage. Let me give you 120 seconds for this. We can go back, we can reread bits, okay? And then you can decide. Okay. Yes, yes. Going back right away. Okay, sorry. Read the options at least. Ironic, critical, reverential, admiring, detached, analytical, harsh, dismissive. Now let's go back. Question? Okay, let's go to the question. So 120 seconds was a lot for this. I'm sure almost everybody has marked. And I can see that you have narrowed down to A and C. Some of you have also marked D, but still, this is how your responses look like. Okay. Let's see, I was going to mark D, but then again read the word harsh. Yes, it's not dismissive also. Dismissive is when you completely, dismiss the other side, in the sense you just say that their opinions are not valid. That is being dismissive. But that's not the case. There has been an engagement with their ideas. There has been an engagement with Descartes' ideas, Descartes' philosophical views, right? So if you see, now I understand some of your marking detached and analytical. The analytical part I agree with, but do you feel that the tone is detached? That the author sounds detached here? If you see, we have the author's, this sentence is purely the author's opinion here, perhaps, or the interpretation of what Mary said. Perhaps she meant that children are a reminder that our intellectual pursuits have to be earned just as much as walking and using cutlery. Okay, so basically she's trying to say that, Descartes privileged the mind over body. Descartes felt that, our brain has to be given more importance, our thinking side has to be given more importance. But see, so many of these basic functions, children remind us, they are also as important, and they also have to be learned as much as, these bigger things like our intellectual pursuits. So this here is not a detached comment. In fact, there is a sort of wryness to it. What is wryness? Yes, what does this adjective mean, wry? a sort of a dry humor, you know, satirical sort of a humor. When there are people, no, who joke, and they'll joke with a serious face, and their joke also is delivered in a flat tone, or layered bhi hai joke, witty hai par layered hai, and it takes you some time to realize, oh, you know, oh, that's such a witty joke. So that is wryness, that is wry humor. So this year it's saying that, you know, children remind us कि ये भी सीखना होता है, ये भी सीखा हुई चीज़ है, ऐसा नहीं ये सब हम सीख कर ही पैदा होते हैं, right? So there is a sort of an ironic side to it, and of course here there is an element of criticism as well, right? That the children, you know, Mary's reflections present children as the bump in the carpet that reveals the fundamental flaws in grand philosophical visions. So the author is calling Descartes' vision as very grand, very lofty, right? And kind of calling it flawed. So there is a subtle criticism there, right? In fact, it's not even subtle, I would say. There is criticism. So if you go back, it is gently critical because most of the criticism has been delivered through Mary, but towards the end, the author also becomes critical. Ironic because there is this sort of humor, right? When when Mary says that children remind us how people are different from animals, and then the author adds their own comment that they show us that, you know, everything has to be earned. So ironic and gently critical, not harsh and dismissive. We don't see, you know, if this were the tone, we would see a lot of forceful adjectives, right? That this is preposterous, what they are saying is absolutely baseless, illogical. So that is a harsh and dismissive tone. Yes, like a political speech. Correct. Sometimes, yes. So eliminated. Yes, correct. See, and it's not detached. The author appears to be invested enough to, you know, joke about it. So not detached. That is why A. Is this clear? Why not C and why A? Primarily because of detached. Okay. What is the meaning of reverential? Reverential. To revere someone is to respect them. So very respectful, yes, very respectful and admiring tone. That is reverential. So not at all, right? Okay, the last question. You have to weaken the critique of Descartes presented in the passage. You have to weaken the criticism against Descartes, right? That's the idea. 90 seconds. Let's see. All right, 22% of you have marked B. Okay, that means this was tricky for you, this question. There is a lot of divergence. Okay, let's see why that is the case. But B looked clearly strengthening the critique. Okay, right. Let's see. A says Midgley later admitted that her portrayal of Descartes' isolation was meant as a metaphor, not a literal critique. Okay, a lot of you have marked this. So let's say she was her portrayal of Descartes' isolation was meant as a metaphor. So basically, she's trying to say that it was not particularly Descartes whom I was criticizing, right? It was not particularly his methodology that I was criticizing. I was using that as a metaphor, right? Meaning that basically it's probably the underlying ideology, perhaps the underlying thinking that I was criticizing. It is not, let's say, the isolation part per se. It is not his specific methodology per se. That is what Midgley admitted to, right? I am not saying that this is not weakening, but you tell me, is it significantly weakening? What is, okay, let's first figure out what is the critique of Descartes. What is the critique of Descartes in the passage? So the critique is that his philosophy begins in quarantine, it begins in social isolation, and basically we are critiquing all these ideas. This fantasy of isolation, the privileging of mind above the body, the insistence that knowledge can be achieved all on one's own. This is all that is being criticized, right? Okay. So now if she says that, Descartes particularly was meant, let's say, just as an example of people who are doing it, it was not to, criticize specifically him. If she says that, it could weaken Descartes' critique, but not very significantly, because the overall idea, this privileging of mind over body, that thinking arises, you can think all on your own, you can arrive at conclusions all on your own, that Midgley would still be criticizing, right? Make sense? Yes. So critique was against not just his isolation philosophy, it was also on the fact that we can, arrive at true knowledge by ourselves. We don't need other people. Then our mind is superior to our body, right? So that is why we need to really think. We need to be intellectual. We need to think during those 6 days. So that's why I feel it weakens, but not significantly. But not that significantly. Now, let's see. Some of you are saying that B is strengthening. Descartes argued that while initial reflection required solitude, initial reflection, true understanding. Now, some of you must have thought that, ma'am, you only told us in the last session that there are times when the examiner will try to dilute the earlier statement. They will say something, but then they will dilute it later on. But the idea is that this is still true, right? That he argued that initial reflection required solitude. So this bit is still true, and I absolutely agree with you. If you read this bit, it looks like that this is strengthening. But look at the difference between initial reflection and true understanding. You tell me, क्या ज़्यादा important है? True understanding ज़्यादा बड़ी चीज़ है या फिर वो initial reflection वाला part ज़्यादा बड़ी stage है? Yes. Yes, absolutely, Govinda. So true understanding is what we are after, right? That eventually involved re-engagement with the world. That means अगर आपको finally अच्छी true एक अंडरस्टैंडिंग पर आना है, आपको री एंगेज करना पड़ेगा वर्ल्ड के साथ. तो अगर हमने ये बात बोल दी, दैट मीन्स आर अंडरस्टैंडिंग डिवेलप्स इन रिलेशनशिप विद अदर पीपल. यही बात तो सब बोल रहे थे ना कि डिकार्टिस क्यों नहीं समझ पा रहा है ये बात. अब देखो डिकार्टिस समझ पा रहा है ये बात. सो दिस इज एक्चुअली वीकनिंग द क्रिटिसिज्म ऑफ डिकार्टिस. डू वी गेट दिस? ओके. सी सेज many of Descartes' contemporaries, including women, valued his method for helping them reflect on their own experiences. So, I am not saying that his method is completely valueless. Does the passage say that? His method is just useless. It's valueless. It doesn't hold value. For a lot of people, let's say, who don't have a family or who can afford that isolation, they may find it very useful. The author has not denied that. So this is not in any way weakening Descartes' criticism. Okay? Make sense? The critique was not supporting re-engagement. See, Descartes पहली बात डिकार्टिस ने क्या कहा कि नॉलेज आएगी जब आप आइसोलेशन में बैठकर सोचोगे, ठीक है, जब आप आइसोलेशन में बैठ के यू विल थिंक. दीज वर द टू इम्पॉर्टेंट एलिमेंट्स, राइट. तो इसलिए हमने उसको क्रिटिसाइज करा, क्रिटिक करा. व्हाट वाज द क्रिटिक? कि हाउ कैन यू से दैट थिंकिंग हैपन्स इन आइसोलेशन. हमारे थॉट्स तो इंटरेक्शंस का भी तो प्रोडक्ट होते हैं ना, रिलेशनशिप्स का भी प्रोडक्ट होते हैं. ये क्रिटिसिज्म था. अब इसको हम कैसे वीकन कर सकते हैं? अगर हम ये बोल दें अरे डिकार्टिस ने यही बात बोली थी जो आप बोल रहे हो, डिकार्टिस ने भी यही बात बोली थी, तो यहाँ पर हम यही बोल रहे हैं ना अरे डिकार्टिस ने भी यही बोला है कि आपको एंगेज करना पड़ेगा वर्ल्ड के साथ, तो फिर इस क्रिटिसिज्म की ज़रूरत ही नहीं है, राइट. Yes, excellent, Dhruv. So this is called argument by authority. Just because certain people support something, right? Just because, let's say, certain influential people, let's take an example, they support an idea, that does not make that idea logical, right? So just because a lot of contemporaries of Descartes support this, they find value in it, that does not make it absolutely flaw-free. Okay. D. Descartes' writings suggest he believed that emotional and social experiences could cloud judgment during philosophical inquiry. That means this is supporting जो भी passage कह रहा है वो, this is strengthening the critique. I think where you got confused was कि हमें critique को weaken करना है, हमें Descartes के critique को weaken करना है. Okay, that is what we have to do. All right. Does this make sense? If Descartes only supports, then it would weaken the most. Yes. Then we would not need the critiques at all. फिर तो critics की need ही नहीं बचेगी ना. Criticism का basis ही फिर तो वो चला ही गया, right? Okay, so that means this was a difficult question for you. I did not anticipate that when I framed this question, but good. This was this was insightful for me. I think 53% of you marked this correctly, so this was moderate for you. This was, I think, on the easier side, and here again this was there was a lot of divergence here, so this was difficult for you. So all in all, I think the questions make this passage more difficult than, let's say, its content. Right? How do we support critique? When we say something, let's say, when we say that, okay, yeah, this one. How does D support the critique? Okay, that's what you're asking. How does option D support it? Because D will give more reasons to the critics to say, अरे नहीं ये तो गलत बात कह रहा है कि social experiences cloud करते हैं judgment. तो वो क्या कर रहा है? critique को strengthen कर रहा है, right? अब उसके जो क्रिटिक्स हैं, जो लोग उसे क्रिटिसाइज कर रहे हैं, वो उनको और रीज़न दे रहे हैं कि हाँ मुझे क्रिटिसाइज करो, देखो मैं कह रहा हूँ सोशल एक्सपीरियंसेस तो मैटर नहीं करते हैं, इनफैक्ट उनसे तो नुकसान होगा. ओके, दैट वे. ऑल राइट. Sometimes, Suryansh, sometimes. So we've been recording the solutions for your RC tests, and I just recorded a difficult RC passages solution. And trust me, while the passage was a relatively difficult read, but the questions were easy. So my effort here is to bring questions on the difficult side. मैं कभी कभी बीच में moderate passages ले आती हूँ, but मेरा effort ये रहता है कि हम यहाँ पर difficult questions करें, इसलिए difficult है. Okay? All right. So I hope this helped you. And yes, we'll meet again next week with 2 more editorials, right? I'll sort this lagging issue out on YT. I hope some of you actually came to the portal because of this problem, so it was kind of a blessing in disguise, right? Welcome guys, welcome, and I'll see you again. If you have any suggestion for books published this year. Okay, Chahat, currently I'm reading Rabindranath Tagore, so I'm in that era, right? So books published this year, I'll check out if there's some interesting book and I'll recommend it. One book that I recommend is this read by Han Kang. I have forgotten the name, but I think she won the Nobel or the Booker, and I've read some excerpts from some quotes from that book, and it's beautiful. So just search Han Kang and you'll get the book, right? So yeah. All right. Bye bye. Welcome, guys. Welcome. Bye.